Hello, everyone, and welcome to 100 Pictures of Honey, the June version. I always say we, like there's a whole staff behind me. I am very excited tonight to welcome our three readers who are very different poets, and I know you're going to love all of their work. Before we start, I'll just remind everybody that when the readers are reading, if you could please stay muted. Your camera on or off, up to you. Use the chat to encourage, to drop lines that you like. You can use little reactions or whatever to give people their applause. Each reader will have 15 minutes with a little brief introduction from me, but mostly their words, because that's what you're here to hear. And we will probably be ending, it'll be a little bit less than an hour just to respect everybody's time. So I would hope that you could stay for everyone, even if you're just here for one of the readers. I hope you could stay for all of the readers. I did drop in the chat before where you can find us on social media so that you know when the readings are coming. I'll do that again. And I will also drop where to watch us on YouTube. There's a year and a half archive worth of readings up there right now. So please feel free to access them. So without further ado, we're going to start tonight's reading with Amanda Galvan Huynh. Amanda is a sundress pressmate of mine, although unfortunately I have not received her book yet, but I first came upon her poems in Waxwing. One which is an ode to her gold hoop earrings that she wore as a child, and one that is about family and heritage and a little bit of flashback to childhood in the process of buying a belt for a partner. All the poems that I've read of hers online are all really beautiful explorations of family and heritage and belonging, and both the joys and the pitfalls of all three of those things. So I'm very excited to hear from her tonight. Her new book that's out now on Sundress is Where My Umbilical is Buried. I'm going to drop her official bio into the chat, and then also I'll be putting the link to her website and where to purchase her book coming up as well. But without further ado, I'm going to let you hear from Amanda. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Donna. And thank you for everybody who's out here. Right now in Honolulu, it's 1:35 in the afternoon. So good evening to those that are on the East Coast or even in Central, I guess Central Time. That's where I'm originally from, Texas. So Central Time, I'm very aware of it because I'm always having to keep track of 5 hours ahead, 6 hours ahead or behind, and so forth. So thank you for being here tonight. I am going to be reading 5 poems from my new collection, Where My Umbilical is Buried. As Donna had mentioned just now, a lot of it looks at inheritance in terms of what do we inherit from our parents, also what traumas pass from parents to children. More specifically with this book, I'm looking at what I've inherited, not just stories, but also grief and pain from my own mother. So with that said, I actually want to introduce you to my mother in a sense, with this first poem titled Portrait of a Daughter and Her Mother in a Cotton Field, Florida, Texas. She remembers the breath of the sun laboring her skin until she blended into the earth. Her mama ahead racing, empty bags and the clouds, corale, before the day's whistle. One day, my mother on the ground, her hands, roots, unhinged. Brothers told her, levantante, or else she'd get belted. No time to pick the dirt speckled in her fleshy knees or to nurse the cuts, interrupting the lifeline of her palm. Each fist-sized cloud blushed in her caked hands, but she remembers her mama most. So far in front of her that she's the size of her thumb. The orange bandana tied around her head, swaying with each movement. Her mama, too busy picking as much as she could, she didn't notice. My mother, waiting, her small body stood still for her mama to look back, even though my mother knew she couldn't. My family and my inheritance comes from field workers. My family, my grandparents and my parents also worked the fields in Texas. So I'm also looking at this migration and how bodies, especially my mother's and my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, moved across Texas. And at what expense? What was left behind, what was not said, and how does that carry forward? How is it still carrying forward to today? And my mother's mother died when she was 16. And so with that is a certain type of grief that gets passed forward. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the La Llorona tale, folk tale in Mexican-American culture. We see it as more as a story to tell children, get home on time, make sure you're home, or La Llorona would come to get you, because she's known as the mother who drowned her children in a river, and then haunts and cries for those same children. And there are many different versions. That's not the only version out there. But I wanted to play with that folktale. So this one comes out of that. Who La Llorona cries for. I imagine my mother saw the two blue lines as handcuffs made from rivers. 21 and pregnant, the two blue lines applauding, announcing to her in-laws that she had made their son a father, finally. Did she think of her mother? Throughout the next 9 months, did she wonder if her mother sat outside on the porch eating sardines? Did she want to ask her how she carried a pond in her belly? Or what death felt like at 36? In the delivery room, I can hear my mother, mi mamá, calling over and over, mi mamá. Every contraction a protest, a reason not to deliver, not to become her mother, a single mother, a mother who would leave her 16-year-old daughter. In those first seconds, I came up for breath. My mother was already calling for the dead. So there's, of course, when we remember things, it's not always bad. There are some good moments sprinkled in there, and I think that complicates the situation. And with this particular collection, I really looked at how can I complicate this? How do I make things not just black and white, but how do I hold grace for my mother and for understanding who she is? So this next one is titled The Songs of Brujeria. La Luna would be the brightest on Saturday nights for a quince, a wedding, or some other reason to celebrate, to fill a dance hall. Tias refilling plates with barbecue and gossip, beer bottles humming around mouths. Children playing tag under tables until drunk abuelos trap them into norteñaing their boots along to the breath of el acordeón. When cumbia whisked her way through the speakers, the women would line the floor to sway in rhythm to baila esta cumbia, an invitation to mueve la cintura to the music in their blood. These were the songs of brujeria, and this was where the women in my family practiced. These were the nights my mother would take me onto the dance floor with her long black hair cumbiaing to its own beat. She would teach me how to listen to the magic found in those nights, as if all I had to do was press my ear to my pulse to find my way home. Home is so far right now. And it's amazing to kind of look back and realize how short those times were. The get-togethers, family get-togethers, the weddings, especially now that we are, I guess the pandemic came through, and to be like, really, where did the time go? Where did all the change happen? So yes, this next one is, if I can find it, something I was thinking, because of course poetry has that beautiful way of moving past your experience or your family's experience and growing larger. So this one is small, and maybe that's why I can't find this small poem. Give me a second. Titled Hands of Mothers. Here we go. It's hiding from me. Here we go. Hands of mothers. Bless the hands, whirlpooling sunshine into our backs. The ones pulling our bodies through the small pains of lost toys and friends. The hands that may have never planned on being a mother, and the ones that feared being enough. Bless the hands of mothers who never had one to follow. I recently became a mother myself, a parent, and I think that's what's really special about this book in particular, because I wrote it, majority of the poems, as a daughter. And when I edited the book, I was actually a mother. So it actually expanded in terms of how I organized it, and how I approached it, and the narrative arc in the final version of it. And it also looks like how we move forward with what we inherit. I feel like we have choices. We can either continue a cycle, or we can break the cycle. And what does that cycle look like? So this next poem is another rendition, because I'm definitely thinking about how even in genetics, right? If you have a family member that looks at you, you'd be like, oh, you look like a spitting image of your mother, or you have the features of your father, or you look like Uncle so-and-so. And with these poems, I tried to play with that. So this title sounds very similar to a poem I just read. This is Who La Llorona's daughter cries for. So yes. I see the two blue lines as doves made of dust stew, 32 and pregnant. The two blue lines hum before overflowing into song, piano keys for my in-laws. Your son will be a father. I think of my mother. Throughout the next 9 months, I wonder if my mother sat inside the tub, too sick to eat. I want to ask how she carried a pond in her belly. Did she feel like a forgotten melody? In the delivery room, I don't call for my mother. I tumble low, over and over like earth, surrendering to the stream. Every contraction, a welcome, an undoing, a promise not to become my mother, a broken child, a woman unable to forgive a world that took her mother. In those first seconds, my child comes up for breath. I call for no one. And this is also another portrait. I realize I have a really great, a really good friend that I met, and she changed how I looked at poems in terms of whether or not we are writing portrait type poems or landscape, or if they feel more abstract in regards to photography. And that's really stuck with me and also influenced a lot of the titles for some of these poems. So it's again similar, the same idea in terms of reimagining or mirroring, in a sense, the same titles or the same feeling. This poem that I'm about to read is titled Portrait of a Daughter and Her Mother on the Sidewalk. Bare feet and a sunflower dress, she stood beside her mother on the sidewalk under a tree at 6 years old. Before her baby was born, she moved an ocean away. They became strangers. They stopped talking. The broken ceramic spoon, the divorce. She returned from Mexico with no room left to hold her mother's pain. Before the land between them split, and she grew brave enough to save the child she once was from the house that belonged to her mother. She never knew how it would feel to be mothered. So that is, I'm also looking at time too. I'm also gonna end, I think I have time for one more. And one that's on a lighter end, that brings my sister here, because I love reading this one, especially when my little sister's around. I'm not sure for those who are familiar with Selena or Selena Quintanilla. And this is about a beautiful moment or a hilarious moment between my sister and I that inspired this one. When my little sister mistakes Selena for Selena Gomez, I whip around so fast, she gets whiplash. No sister of mine will confuse Selena with Selena Gomez. I say Selena, slow and enunciate the Spanish, because when you say Selena in Spanish, every Tejana knows you're praying to the queen of Tejano. La reina de cumbia, patron saint of red lipstick, pizza, bomb-ass bustier, purple jumpsuits and washing machine hips, a voice untamed by the American tongue. She's the patron saint of Latinas everywhere, a light embossed into memory that we can be something more in this borderland of tongues, on this American soil, so quick to tie our names down to English. Because don't you know, Selena Gomez was named after Selena. America turned her into something it could hold in its mouth. Thank you.
I love that poem. Thank you so much. The poems are beautiful. If you were not paying attention earlier, here's where you can find Amanda and her books and her poems. Please check them out. What a wonderful reading, and how those poems all echo and bounce off of each other is really astounding. And I love that you mentioned the idea of poems in the language of photography, because that's like the perfect segue into our next reader. I think it had to be maybe 10 years ago, I'm guessing, that I first met Lennart Lundh in the Chicago poetry landscape, out at readings and such. And in that time, I'm not only an admirer of his work, but I have found him to be really such an inspiration and a role model for me of both creative generosity, as he has for years written poems as fundraising efforts for cancer research, and also a role model for creative longevity. Len was a historian for years and turned to creative work later in his life, and he is always doing something new. And to me, that is just so beautiful, that not only that generosity exists in his spirit and in his work, but that he will continue to create, I think, until he no longer can, and that includes being a photographer as well. His book, Cutting a Sunbeam, which I had the pleasure of blurbing, is an ekphrastic book of prose poems about historical photographs. And his work is just accomplished and diverse and wonderful. And I'm so happy to bring Len to a bigger audience. So it is yours, Len. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you in advance, Jennifer. And thank you for those of you who have shown up for this evening. Yeah, it's 10 or 11 years since we met. It was when I think your first collection came out. You were reading in a library, and I accidentally found out about it. And Donna introduced me to the initial people that I needed to know in the Chicago area. And from there, everything spread. So I owe her my thanks. And she's also a very generous person, no doubt about it. Okay, I'm going to give you some pieces, first of all, from the book that Donna was waving, Cutting a Sunbeam, which came out just in time for the pandemic. So we'll start with those. The other children follow a snake's line around the small classroom. Paper hats for uniforms and obedience. Above the scuff of worn shoes on bare dirt, they sing a doggerel in some foreign tongue, understanding only the teacher's smile. Her hair falling free of folded deadwood, Marie Claire has other business. Standing completely tall on a small stool in the shadowed furnace room, she raises wooling shears to find what might be revealed if she cuts the room's single shaft of sunshine in half during its fall from skylight to floor. If she tilts the universe by just a few degrees of adolescent curiosity. I think that cover photo, which is driven by this poem, says everything about creative people. You know, we do indeed turn the world a little bit before we describe it. A Boston Marriage in Paris. To the Olympia and the ballet last night, a mix of comedy and beautiful young dancers. During the intermission, Kay moved her chair so that we could sit nearer and be heard above the auditory anarchy. Warm as the close hall was, the touch of our shoulders was comforting and flashed memories of summer nights beneath the moonlight washing our bed. I so enjoy the company of another woman, no matter the looks our public closeness may sometimes draw. To bask in the strength and tenderness we give unasked and without vows is a joy I have yet to find when socially surrounded by men, except perhaps my brothers. Just before the bell, I half turned at a scratching note behind us to see a stranger, charcoal stick to paper on her lap, committing us for future work. I smiled half-heartedly at first, but her eyes assured this was no act of fruitery. Perhaps I'll try to find her so I can share that sketch with my companion. Quick interjection. I have a fair number of pieces, nowhere near the majority, but that are written in a woman's voice or from a woman's point of view. And so far, nobody's given me too much grief about appropriating that. In my own defense, I've been married 55 years. I've got 3 grown daughters, 2 grown granddaughters, 2 grown granddaughters-in-law, and an 11-year-old great-granddaughter. So exposure to the woman's point of view is not something I am making up out of whole cloth. Little Billy's gone missing from his house down the block. No one's too worried yet. It's only been a day, and the neighborhood's always been safe. Probably slept at a friend's house after staying out too late. Didn't call to say, and now he's scared he'll get yelled at. Doesn't realize how much his parents miss him. He'll come back. Not that it's the first time. When his gramps was Billy's age, he tried to run away from the civil defense drills at school from the Russians in Moscow and the Reds in Hollywood, a few hours north on the coastal highway. And William Jr. hid too, when he overheard his father's talk of being a soldier in Vietnam, saw the pain behind the words that tried to stay hidden. They both came back the next day, or mostly back anyway. But I'm not so sure this time. I heard Billy say he was going home as he put on his foil and cardboard spacesuit, fastened the shiny square helmet, turned the power control on his chest. I saw him run down the gravel road faster and faster, his feet kicking up dust like rocket smoke every time he jumped and stretched for the sky. And then he was gone from sight. There's a woman playing fiddle among the wildflowers at the top of the hill. Tunes the older players taught when they were her connection to the past, when she was their way of saving it. Melodies she heard on the radio late at night as the beams traveled endlessly from cities she'll never see. Patterns of notes born in her mind, hers to teach to others when the times come, theirs with luck to pass on in return. So no, she's not a woman playing fiddle. She's a fiddler, all fiddlers, all in one. She and the fiddle are one. There's a young boy standing close to her, rising to her waist, staring my way with mistrust, eyes calculating what future I might be bringing with me to this sanctuary in the rolling, climbing forest. He could be her son, a younger brother, a village ward. She looks down to him, pretending to ignore my arrival as her way to reassure him. Perhaps she'll change her tune. Perhaps she'll weave a new one. Perhaps she'll start to sing a love song or sad song or one and the same. They can be, you know. And maybe she'll wave me to sit among the flowers while she dances her fiddler's dance, her mother's or sister's reel. And maybe she'll gesture with beckoning smile for me to pick up my guitar and play with her, to click my heels and dance with her. Maybes like hard streams, easy streams. So many maybes we neither know yet. Lions and Tigers and Bears comes from a 1931 photograph of the Ringling Brothers Circus when it was in Brooklyn in New York. Something in the picture says, "Remember me," each time he holds it in trembling hands. Turning it over, he sounds out the words in pencil there. Circus. He knows that. The place with wild animals and, let's see, yes, with other things. Brooklyn is harder. He thinks he might have lived there, but his wife says he confuses it with Chicago. He doesn't know where that is, though he guesses it's a place. 1931 is surprisingly easy. That's the year he was 6 and his first brother was 3, right before the family moved from Brooklyn, yes, to his Uncle John's farm overlooking the fjord in Norway. He smiles, turns the picture back over, hears, "Remember me," but doesn't. The next few poems are from How I Went Into the Woods, which is with Catherine James' book out in North Carolina. And I'm told that between having many strokes, the publisher is actually trying to get the book out. So we're going to see what happens. Fortunately, Doug is doing pretty well. No terrible residual effects. Okay, so she speaks for herself. It's a story often told and always told wrong about how I went into the woods and met a tragic fate at the hands of some who saw my crown as riches. Others who envied my clothes and left me naked, alone, vulnerable to self-reflection, its partner self-pity, and their coupled bending madness. Have you ever met a princess, a real one, left to her own devices and free to wander unconstrained? Have you ever met a princess, one with self-respect and sanity, who wouldn't want to run away? There were no woods. I gave away my crown, its jewels, cast off silks and petticoats to wear a simple frock, dirty, worn. There was no clearing with a pond. I gazed into myself, be sure of that, but in doing so, found peace, myself. Self-pity and a form of madness belong to those who just want to hear the story. Harbor and Wine Press. After a 16th century sketch by Fra Bartolomeo. This is where you brought me when we wed. I, 15 and not yet quick with child, though filled with longings passed down by my mother and her own. You, 18 and poorly educated to a life not set before you in the halls your father brought the tutors to. The copse of trees is thinner now, as is my life these years alone. The room in back, where first we took each other with an innocent savagery bordering rape, is mine alone, a shrine holding memories that end with you. At the gate, our oldest son and his son, a Tom that came to clear the mice and stayed when they were gone, a wine press calling forth the joy of life. The mist grape is as fruitless as imagined lives without this place. Matters of weight, after Vermeer's painting of a woman holding a balance. The scale is small in fine fingers, but capable of measuring a soul against a table filled with riches that appear so incredibly large. An illusion, with the spirit weighing more than them all. Both gravid and widowed, she thinks often on the soul, how it seems massive yet infinitesimal at once, wondering if she contains two or if the baby shares hers for now. And she wonders about hearts, how large a scale she'd need to to weigh the love that filled her. She places a hand to her chest, feels what must be her husband's heart, beating in the place where hers broke. Autumn morning invitation, or invocation. Keep reading that wrong. After the Angelus. A theme from some unfinished movie, maybe a morality script by Bergman. Norwegian wife, Inga, her taciturn Swedish spouse farmer, Knut, praying in a northern Minnesota field before committing their fourth child, stillborn, to the uncertain earth. As if what angels live here are deaf, have been struck mute or forgetful. As if life were not hard enough, little more than harsh repayment for tending the heartbreaking fields. As if God has emigrated elsewhere, far beyond caring for this landscape. Lutheran, their words are not the Angelus, some supplication for Mary's grace, certainly not Latin, but a Viking tongue. Still, the basic sense is similar. A place for paths to understanding miracles that never find fruition, never ripen, calling us to not abandon hope or love. And one more piece, and this is the only thing on my post bucket list. Last week, I had one of my poems taught in a classroom, so that finished off my bucket list as a poet. This one is for after, because it's the one thing that I want to be remembered for if everybody forgets every other poem I've ever written. Just this one. Elegy. Dig the small grave and place the smaller body so, just so. The chill May rain and the warm human tears falling on her head will serve for the ritual washing of this pup, barely 2 days old. Some future digger after truth, alien or human, kneeling with trowel and brush at this grave, will note in clear script the wonder that a people would be so deliberate with the smallest of their God's creatures and so careless of themselves. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Len. What a beautiful way to end. And that image of the unpressed grape being these fruitless imagined lives that didn't occur. That image is going to stay with me for a long time. It's so evident that you're knowledgeable about history and you're able to really create worlds in your poems. So thank you so much for sharing them with us this evening. And we're going to move on to our last reader, last but not least. I been aware of Jennifer's work for a while online. I think we've been connected online for a little bit of time. And I had this moment where I was like, okay, I need to read way more of this person's work. When I can't remember which journal this poem was in, but she has a poem called "Did It Take Long to Find Me," which is a line from the Cat Stevens song Moonshadow. And I was absolutely obsessed with Cat Stevens in middle school and high school. And as soon as I read this poem and then this beautiful line from that poem, long ago I admired gratitude, prayed for pain to teach me until I felt pain. Now I'm just greedy, clumsy. I love that line so much. And she has so many accolades and wonderful books out, and I know she's going to share some of that work with you this evening, and I'm very excited to hear what she's going to share with all of you. So it is now time for Jennifer Martelli.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. And thank you for this reading series. It's not an easy thing to curate and run a reading series. So, yay. Really wonderful. And Amanda and Len, it's wonderful to hear your work. I wasn't familiar with it, so I just really enjoyed it. So I'm going to read a few poems from my chapbook, my most recent chapbook from Harbor Editions, All Things Are Born to Change Their Shapes, and then a couple from my book from last year. And as I was putting my work together, I realized I thought to myself, I was almost embarrassed. I'm like, jeepers, I watch a lot of television and movies because I had so many poems that take in movies. So I said, I'm just going to lean into it. So just a little bit of background with this chapbook. The bulk of it was written in 2017, which was the first summer after Trump was elected into office. I was also part of this Plaque Poetry Project where we were writing poems responding to Ariel, and we knew how that ended. Television-wise, in movie land, the Hulu series The Handmaid's Tale just came out, and they did a remake of The Mummy with Tom Cruise, but The Mummy was a woman in this. So that's just background that you need to know for these couple of poems. And I'm just going to read a few parts from this longer poem. The name of it is Women Who Can't Breathe, featuring women from The Mummy, The Handmaid's Tale, and Kill Bill Volume 2, Part 1. Inevitably, they had to mummify a woman alive. She wasn't tragic like Boris Karloff. She was betrayed by her father, oldest tale written on papyrus in the book with engraved cover and latch. She filled her belly with cinnamon and lichen, with onions and palm wine, washed her own muslin strips, bleached the cloth shroud of Turin white without ever knowing why. The smell of juniper and wood tar, the volatile oil hung in the hot air before she knew what her father had planned for her. Part 3. The women wear red and are enslaved. The women wear gray drab and bake bread. Regal women in robin's egg blue are enslaved. Old women in army green tase young women with electric cow prods. Most blue and green women think they're free. Some smoke, and that looks delicious and calming. I have to watch The Handmaid's Tale carefully, cover my eyes so I don't see the teasers in between for the movie where a woman is wrapped in scented layers of soft anointed muslin and locked alive into a snake-carved coffin. They leave triangle eye holes to let in lingering light and air. Part 6. The purple lupins are in full bloom. They grow high as my neighbor's rock wall and guard queen of night tulips that crown for just one day, and the small grove of white birches, trunks wrapped with fragile gauze. This is a garden of Grecian punishments. The birch are females who danced and danced too proudly for the gods. The queen's defiant as Kill Bill's bride. You're going under the ground tonight, Bud said, blind, burning, buried alive. The bark around the white birches is paper strips coiled to the skin, a brace to tighten the scoliotic trunks, make them right. My bulbs will come from a nursery this fall. I'll bury them deep and dormant. They'll rise mid-spring, glossy and purple black. So this next poem is, I guess you'd call it a prose poem. And just, I want to give content warning. There is mention of sexual assault in here. The title is a line from Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles, but it really responds to the 1979 movie Tess, starring Natasha Kinski as Tess. You are lying on an altar. It hums, Tess said of Stonehenge. Hearken. Before she was murdered, Sharon Tate gave her husband, Roman Polanski, Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles, convinced it would make a great movie. Welsh singer Tom Jones, also on Charles Manson's kill list, sang the murder ballad, Delilah. The wronged lover, blaming his victim, asks in the refrain, why, Delilah? Some academics blame Tess for her own rape in the chase, blame Tess's want of firmness. The stones at Stonehenge were also culpable in Tess's death. One stone lay warm and flat like a palm for her to sleep on until the sun rose. This happiness could not have lasted, Tess said, lying in the circle past the slaughter stone. Those 2-ton bluestones quarried in Wales were roped and dragged on a glacial highway to Salisbury Plain in Britain, where they say any foreign stone is a bluestone. Polanski, a fugitive wanted for the rape of a 13-year-old, was confined to Europe while filming Tess. From the barrow mounds beyond the chalk circle, they dug up arrows, a bronze torque around a child's neck bones, dolerite axe heads, bone blades. I'm going to try to do a Katharine Hepburn imitation in this poem, but it probably won't sound very good. Forced night farming. She was already awake, lying on her left, good for the spleen. I saw how her deep roots grayed throughout the night. The rhubarb crowns, she asked, did you bring them down to the laundry room? I said, I don't believe in forced night farming, and you know I hate the white bitter stalks, the red. She hoped to bake strawberry rhubarb pie. That's how I knew it was done. Over. That berry looks like a clot, something past, miscarried, and she's known me forever. She spoke in her Katharine Hepburn, the Lion in Winter voice. Love me or leave me, little lamb. I'll never leave you, I said. I can't. Too soon for me, having just emerged from my tomb. I asked her if she thought we were prone to be blue, a glut of old stuck Neanderthal DNA spiraling inside us like moons. Her face was still unlined. I like my fruit cold is all. In the room, deep in the corner, I thought I saw a ghost clutching a purple flower. The worst was waking to damp and crumbled sheets. So the Queen of Queens refers to Geraldine Ferraro, who she was in 1984. This is the second time I could ever vote in a presidential election. She was on the ticket as the vice president, Walter Mondale. And I was just so happy to vote for him. That ticket was decimated. Nobody, they lost really badly to Ronald Reagan. But this book really explores that, explores my own interaction with the 80s and what was going on then and how it's repeated. I mean, we are, the legacy of that. So I'm going to read two poems from this. And again, another content warning in this one. Why I began writing about vice presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro. Behind Commonwealth Avenue, next to the old dome temple they turned into an observatory, the theater premiered Flashdance. After that, no one wore a sweatshirt without the neck hole torn to the shoulder knobs, like Jennifer Beals, who unhooked her bra, pulled it from the sleeve without ever breaking eye contact. Someone smarter than I must know how many times I've orbited over 3 decades. Everything then is happening again. Back in the 80s, a rich man raped his first wife, and now I have to look at his face every day. Last night, I streamed Jennifer Beals on all my devices. How I love her every move. Of course, she was a welder during the daytime. I took the one freshman in my dorm who looked like the steel mill owner up to my single room. What I mean is when my joints pop, when I'm like a maniac on the floor, ghosts come. I don't come to anything in quiet. Maybe it was there on the cold linoleum, maybe against the cinder block bricks, maybe it was the towers with this stupid boy on top of me, that I was hopeful I could conjure anybody or anything I wanted. So you can't have a book about the 80s without Molly Ringwald. She wrote a really, really good essay a few years ago talking about her role in John Hughes movies and just sort of, at the time, what they didn't seem problematic, but now looking back, there's a cringe factor. So the title is a quote from her essay, which is called "What About the Breakfast Club? Revisiting the Movies of My Youth in the Age of #MeToo." And I hope I'm ruining this movie for anybody. So I'm sorry. And yet, at the end of the movie, Molly folded her left diamond stud into Judd's fingerless gloved fist, which he pumped high, triumphant, frozen in that 80s stop action, rewarded after a day at Shermer High School, Shermer, Illinois, in 1984, for his slow clap after her perfect cleavage lipstick rub. How ashamed she was, dragging the color from her own full lips, after calling her Queenie for hours, after crawling through the tunnel her legs made below the desk where he ducked, and I could feel it, his long dirty hair tickling the insides of her thighs. I remember loving that suede sarong. I mean, to own such a thing in high school, and how she matched her outfit perfectly, the pink V-neck shirt with that thick, rich pelt. And I'm going to end with a new poem, and the little mummy returns. So I sometimes wonder if I'm not writing the same poem over and over again. This poem, the title is a quote from the amazing artist, Eva Yuskevich. Is there anything under that layer? I fear suffocation and I fear snakes. And once in a movie, I saw a man with a python wrapped around his whole head. He couldn't even scream. That actor, a pale, flaccid man, wry and always amused, died not too long ago. One summer, the previews and teasers ran in a loop for the Mummy Redux. A young princess betrayed by her father was mummified alive, wrapped in cloth and locked in an iron tomb, carved with the face of a screaming woman and snakes. A snake can crawl brand new out of its own long skin. The father betrayed his daughter because he adhered to his own mythology, like most fathers. I think I fear suffocation because of the weight covering me, stars asphyxiating themselves, colors imploding into jewel tone hues like the diamonds of a hungry snake. One friend insisted I fear snakes because I fear the penis. Another said I fear trains crossing bridges because they look like snakes if I could see them while flying way up where the air is too thin to breathe. I fear suffocation and snakes and bridges and the penis, but mostly I don't want to be disregarded. That's the fear. I'm wrapped in snakeskin and cloth and cold, thick iron. It's heavy and I'm left. I'm just left. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, so many images from my youth in those poems. So good. I love the way that you wrap those disparate cultural images together and they make perfect sense all together. Really amazing. Thank you again to all three of our readers. Please feel free to share your appreciation in the chat or unmute and clap if you so choose. It's been a wonderful reading. Our July reading will be July 20th, if you'd like to join us, and we're going to have Anna Laura Reeve and Elishiva Fox with their new books from Bell Point Press, and also Joey Gould. So a really wonderful group of readers. So mark your calendar and you'll be seeing promos for that soon. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Like I said, I know it's summertime and some of you are coming from across the world, so you're in all different time zones. And I really do appreciate, and I know the readers appreciate having you here as an audience. I'm going to stop the recording and then you can feel free to either drop some more notes in the chat or unmute and say hello.